Ever imagine yourself holding the reins of power, not through armies or, fancy titles, but through the sheer force of money?
Yeah,
That's exactly what the Medici family pulled off in 15th century Florence.
absolutely.
It's a story, well, it's as captivating as any Renaissance painting, really. Filled with ambition, intrigue, and just boundless creative energy. The kind of energy that shaped an era.
It really is. To understand how they did it, I think we need to kind of step back in time
Okay.
and picture Florence in the 1400s, bustling city, passionate about luxury, trade, all that.
Hmm.
But under this vibrant surface, there's a society deeply rooted in, well, religious doctrine,
Hmm.
where social mobility and the whole idea of profiting from loans were met with, staunch disapproval.
Now, you've provided us with an audio lecture, and it really digs into like the nitty-gritty of the early Medici family's rise. So we're going to unpack how these, let's call them shrewd financiers,
Yeah.
starting from, well, humble beginnings as
Yeah.
bankers, they became the puppet masters of their time, influencing everything from art, architecture to the very fate of the papacy.
You've got it. The Medici story is, at its core, a masterclass in, well, leveraging financial savvy
Right.
to navigate a world steeped in religious and political complexities, really.
Let's talk about, well, this tension between wealth and religious doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
The church back then, they condemned usury,
Right.
seeing it as, a grave sin. I mean, Dante even reserved a special spot for usurers in the seventh circle of hell.
Oh, yeah.
That's serious condemnation.
Absolutely, yeah. Usury, which, back then simply meant lending money at any interest,
Right.
was considered, well, morally reprehensible, a direct violation of God's will.
So how did the Medici, whose entire business model revolved around lending and finance,
Mm-hmm.
how did they reconcile their practices with such a strict religious environment?
They were incredibly shrewd, I have to say, finding loopholes within the system.
Okay.
One of their most ingenious tactics, I think, involved these what they called exchange deals, which took advantage of the fact that, well, different cities, different countries, they had different currencies.
Right, just like we exchange dollars for euros today.
Exactly. So imagine, say, a merchant who needs to convert English pounds into, let's say, Florentine florins.
Okay.
The Medici would offer an exchange rate, well, slightly in their favor.
Okay.
Then a few months later, they'd offer to convert those florins back into pounds, again at a, favorable rate.
Hmm.
This back and forth movement of money, well, it effectively generated interest
Right.
without technically violating the church's prohibition.
Some clever financial maneuvering.
Mm-hmm.
But surely people still had some concerns, right,
That
about the morality of it all.
Indeed. The fear of, well, divine retribution, that was a powerful motivator.
Right.
So wealthy Florentines often, made substantial donations to the church.
Okay.
They funded the construction of, say, churches, monasteries, almost as a way to cleanse their souls from the perceived taint of their financial dealings.
And this is where the Medici's patronage of the arts comes in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were commissioning masterpieces by Donatello, Michelozzo, Fra Angelico, some of the biggest names of the Renaissance. But it wasn't simply a love of art that drove them, was it?
You're catching on quickly. Their patronage was strategic, a calculated move, really, to legitimize their wealth and power
Okay.
within a society that, well, placed immense value on religious piety.
So it was like a PR campaign,
Hmm.
showcasing their devotion despite their wealth, almost saying, look, we may make money in ways the church frowns upon, but we reinvest it for the, greater good, beautifying the city, supporting religious institutions, commissioning art that glorifies God.
Exactly. It was brilliant. And no one wielded it more effectively than, well, Cosimo de' Medici,
'Cause
the architect of the family's rise to power.
the Godfather. We're going to dive into his story. What made him stand out from other wealthy individuals? He wasn't just amassing wealth. He was using it to gain, like, real political influence.
Cosimo, he was a shrewd operator, a master strategist. He understood that in a republic like Florence, real power resided in, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. He cultivated alliances, neutralized rivals, made himself indispensable, really, to the city's elite,
Right.
all while projecting this image of piety and public service.
From what I've gathered, the Florentine political landscape was, well, quite volatile.
Oh, yeah.
New leaders were elected every 2 months, which seems, well, pretty ripe for instability and short-sighted decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
How did someone like Cosimo, who was playing the long game, how did he thrive in such a chaotic environment?
It's a testament to his political savvy and, well, his understanding of human nature. I mean, while the Florentines cherished their republic, their system of government, it was incredibly complex and
Hmm.
prone to, factionalism.
Right.
Cosimo, despite his wealth and influence, he wasn't immune to this.
Oh.
He was even exiled for a period by his political rivals, the Albizzi family.
So even the Medici weren't invincible.
Even the most powerful figures, they are vulnerable to the shifting tides of politics.
Hmm.
In Cosimo's case, his rivals, they made a crucial error, allowing a government sympathetic to him to be elected.
So they essentially handed him a ticket back to Florence.
Yeah, and in doing so, they paved the way for his return to power.
It sounds like a classic case of be careful what you wish for.
Indeed. Upon his return, Cosimo consolidated his power, ensuring his rivals wouldn't pose a threat again.
Hmm.
His exile, in a strange twist of fate, well, it strengthened his position.
That's quite a comeback story. But we haven't even touched upon the Medici's relationship with the papacy. A relationship, well, I imagine was fraught with complexities. They were, after all, the Pope's bankers, a position that comes with its own set of challenges and opportunities.
That's where we'll pick up next time.
Okay.
The Medici's relationship with the papacy, it was a delicate dance, a balancing act of power, profit, and religious obligation. The papacy, well, they were a source of immense wealth and influence, They collected tithes from all over Europe, led to this, constant flow of money
Right.
that needed to be managed, moved across borders, exchanged between, currencies.
So essentially, the Medici were operating as this kind of, proto-central bank for the church, facilitating those international transactions, overseeing vast financial networks.
That's a great way to put it. But
Yeah.
their relationship with the papacy, well, it wasn't always harmonious,
Oh.
Other powerful banking families, they were also vying for a piece of the pie, creating, fierce competition for the church's business.
And let's not forget that, well, inherent tension, right, between the church's condemnation of usury
Right.
and their reliance on a banking family whose profits, well, stemmed from exploiting the very loopholes they condemned.
Exactly. The Medici had to tread carefully, balancing their financial ambitions with the need to, well, maintain a favorable relationship with their most powerful client.
Sounds like they were walking a tightrope,
Yeah.
constantly navigating those political and religious currents of the time.
Their success really relied on their ability to, adapt, to understand the motivations and desires of those in power. And this brings us back to their patronage of the arts. It wasn't simply about beautifying Florence or, showcasing their piety. It was a shrewd investment
Right.
in their image, a way to shape, public perception
Yeah.
and solidify their standing within a society grappling with, well, changing values.
You mentioned earlier that the Medici, well, they embraced the humanist movement.
Yes.
A philosophical shift that emphasized, human reason, human potential, a departure from that, well, strictly religious worldview that had dominated the Middle Ages.
Right.
How did this play into their patronage?
Humanism, it was gaining traction among the intellectual elite, including, of course, wealthy individuals like the Medici, who were seeking to, reconcile their material success with their spiritual aspirations.
Right.
It offered, well, a new lens, I think, a new lens through which to view the world, one that valued human achievement and the pursuit of knowledge, alongside, of course, religious devotion.
So they saw in humanism a way to kind of legitimize their wealth,
Yes.
to argue that it wasn't inherently sinful,
Right.
but could be used to cultivate virtue and beauty, to support, intellectual and artistic endeavors that, well, elevated the human spirit.
Precisely. Their patronage, it became a testament to this humanist ideal. They commissioned works that celebrated human achievement, explored, philosophical ideas, and sought to capture the beauty of the natural world.
Okay.
Think of the difference between, say, walking into a church,
Okay.
adorned solely with images of judgment and damnation, versus one filled with scenes of human triumph, stories from, classical mythology,
Right.
and paintings that capture that exquisite beauty of the natural world.
It's a powerful contrast. The Medici, through their patronage, they were shaping a new aesthetic, one that reflected their worldview and subtly promoted their, humanist ideal.
They were creating a visual language that spoke to the changing sensibilities of the time, a language that resonated with both, well, the church and the emerging humanist thinkers. It's no coincidence that Florence, under, Medici influence, became a crucible of artistic innovation. attracting some of the greatest minds of the Renaissance.
It makes you wonder how the course of art history might have,
Yeah.
unfolded differently
Yeah.
without their patronage. Would Florence have become the epicenter of the Renaissance without the Medici's guiding hand?
It's a fascinating question. And while it's impossible to say for certain, there's no denying, the profound impact of their patronage. It fostered a climate of creativity and intellectual exchange that allowed, well, artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli to flourish.
Their story underscores that powerful interplay, doesn't it, between wealth, ambition, and artistic expression.
Mm.
They understood that art wasn't just about aesthetics. It is a powerful tool for shaping perceptions, influencing public opinion, and ultimately, consolidating power.
And it's a legacy that extends, well, far beyond their time. Even today, we marvel at the artistic treasures they helped bring into existence. They understood that investing in art, well, it was a way to transcend their mortality, to etch their names in the annals of history.
Let's return to their relationship with the papacy. It wasn't just about managing finances, was it?
Right.
It was about navigating those complex power dynamics within the church itself.
You're right. The papacy, it wasn't simply a, religious institution. It was a major political player,
Yeah.
controlling vast territories in Italy, wielding, well, considerable influence across Europe.
So by controlling the church's finances, the Medici held a significant degree of control over, European politics and economics.
Precisely. They became, well, the ultimate power brokers,
Mhm.
bankrolling wars, funding political campaigns, even influencing papal elections.
This makes their condemnation of usury all the more ironic, wouldn't you say?
It certainly highlights the inherent contradictions and, well, moral ambiguities of the time. The church, despite its pronouncements against usury, was, deeply enmeshed in the world of finance. They needed the Medici, well, just as much as the Medici needed them.
It seems like they were constantly balancing their own ambitions
Yes.
with the need to appease the church,
Mhm.
a precarious balancing act, to say the least.
It's a testament to their, political dexterity
Right.
and understanding of human psychology. They knew how to play the game,
Yeah.
how to, leverage their wealth and influence to achieve their goal.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
Okay.
From Cosimo's rise to power to their ingenious financial maneuvers and their strategic patronage of the arts. But what about their legacy? What lasting impact did they have on, well, Florence and the world beyond?
Cosimo, in many ways, well, he transformed Florence into the cultural capital of the Renaissance.
Mhm.
He laid the foundation for a period of, artistic and intellectual flourishing that would shape Western civilization for, well, centuries to come.
He was a visionary, a
Yeah.
patron of the arts, let's say, master manipulator,
Yeah.
and a devoutly religious man who, at the same time, wasn't afraid to, bend the rules of the church to achieve his goals.
Mm.
His life, it embodies those complexities and contradictions of the Renaissance, doesn't it?
It's a reminder that history is rarely, black and white. The Medici, for all their flaws and ambitions, they played a pivotal role in shaping the world we live in today.
Their story also raises some, well, thought-provoking questions, I think,
Mm-hmm.
about the relationship between money, power, art, and religion. Do we see similar dynamics at play in our own world today?
Absolutely. The Medici story, it serves as a mirror, really, to contemporary society, prompting us to examine how, wealth and power are used to influence culture, politics, and even our own perceptions of the world.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious about the specific, artistic choices they made. Was there a particular aesthetic they favored?
No.
Were they consciously trying to convey certain messages through the art they commissioned?
That's a great question. The Medici weren't simply, throwing money at artists. They were strategic in their choices, selecting artists whose styles and subject matter aligned with their own, vision and ambitions.
So it wasn't just about creating beautiful things. It was about using beauty as a tool to shape perceptions and reinforce their authority.
Exactly. If we look closely at the art they commissioned, well, we start to see certain patterns emerge.
Okay.
They were drawn to artists who excelled at, say, depicting realism and human emotion.
Can you give us some, specific examples?
Think of Donatello's David,
Okay.
which portrays the, biblical hero not as this stoic giant, but with the sense of like youthful vulnerability and introspection,
Hmm.
or Masaccio's frescoes in the Brancacci Chapel,
Right.
which capture the raw emotion and humanity of, biblical scenes with
Right.
unprecedented realism.
It's as if they were using art to humanize themselves, to show that despite their wealth and power, they were still connected to the, shared human experience.
It was a, well, brilliant strategy, especially considering the context. They were operating within a society deeply rooted in religious tradition. They
Right.
had to walk a fine line, appealing to the church's sensibilities while, subtly promoting their humanist leanings.
So in essence, they were bridging the gap
Hmm.
between the old and the new, embracing the spirit of the Renaissance while, carefully navigating the complexities of their relationship with the church.
Precisely. And they did it with, well, remarkable finesse, creating a legacy that continues to, captivate and inspire us centuries later.
It's fascinating how the Medici used art as, well, this subtle but incredibly powerful tool to shape their image
Yeah.
and influence the world around them. They weren't just patrons, right? They were masters of, well, cultural manipulation, weren't they?
You could say that, yeah. They understood that power of symbolism, of weaving their, humanist ideals into the very fabric of Florentine society through art and architecture. It's a reminder, I think, that the stories we tell ourselves, the images we surround ourselves with, well, they have a profound impact on, how we see the world and our place in it.
Their story, it really makes you think about, well, the role of wealth and power, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Not just in the Renaissance, but throughout history and even in our own time.
Absolutely. The Medici story, it serves as, well, a cautionary tale, reminding us that wealth can be, both a catalyst for great good
Mhm.
and a tool for manipulation and self-aggrandizement. It's a question that every generation grapples with, really, how to wield power responsibly, how to balance, individual ambition with the greater good.
It seems like they were constantly walking that tightrope,
Yeah. Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable even within the church itself.
They were masters at navigating those, gray areas,
Yeah.
exploiting loopholes, bending the rules to their advantage. But we can't deny their contributions.
Right.
They left behind a legacy that continues to inspire and intrigue us centuries later.
It's a legacy that extends far beyond, well, their financial acumen. I mean, they were architects of culture, patrons of the arts, and ultimately shapers of the Renaissance itself.
Their story is, well, a testament to human ingenuity, ambition, and that, enduring power of art to transcend time.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through the world of the Medici. It's amazing to think how one family, starting as, bankers, could have such a profound impact on, well, the course of history.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you. The Medici story, I think, is a reminder that history, well, it's full of surprises, complexities, and, enduring lessons that continue to resonate with us today.
And we hope you, our listener, have enjoyed this deep dive into the world of the Medici. As you go about your day, we'll leave you with this thought. How do you see the dynamics of, well, money, power, and art playing out in your own life and the world around you? We'd love to hear your, reflections. Subscribe to the deep dive for more explorations into fascinating historical figures and events. Until next time.